Just days out from the 2026 NBA draft, there remains uncertainty regarding what the Washington Wizards would do with the #1 overall pick. Now, we can all agree that these players are great in their own right. And there's a lot of people saying that DP is better than AJ, and a lot of people saying AJ is better than DP. The decision is razor thin. So there's only a few factors that are really separating these players from being drafted #1. One of the main points I want to drive home is if Darryn Peterson were 6'9", with a 7-foot wingspan, similar to what AJ Dybantsa, Darryn Peterson would no doubt probably be going #1. That's just my opinion, man. Peterson is also getting a lot of comparisons to Kawhi Leonard, not only because of the load management and the health concerns, but just because of the way that he plays, the killer instinct that he has. He's almost very robotic like Kawhi, not necessarily in his play style, but in his demeanor and how he attacks and approaches the game. So if I were just looking at both players and their physical profiles, ideally you would rather have a 6'9", potential play all four, defend all four positions type player that can handle the ball and be a secondary playmaker and give you clutch buckets versus a 6'5" guard who has aspirations of being a point guard, but his skill set is more suited towards playing an off-ball guard from what we saw in college. One of the negatives behind both these players is their playmaking and decision-making, and I think you can attest that to them being very young, having a lot of pressure on them, and obviously they're going to be the focal point of defenses in a college game that doesn't have as much spacing as an NBA floor will have. So those are factors that you have to consider in these comparisons as well. Who's going to be better with NBA floor spacing in an NBA system? And in my opinion, Kansas put Darryn Peterson in positions where he will probably be getting buckets and getting shots in the NBA, but they didn't necessarily have the proper spacing for Darryn Peterson to flourish. And even though he didn't have the proper spacing to do, and before close to the tournament, he was shooting an even higher clip from the field goal percentage. I think he ended up closer to 43 or 44. So if you ask me, that's the biggest difference when it comes to an eye test with these two guys. The next thing is these guys are two different players, two different physical profiles, two different play styles, two different strengths, and two different weaknesses. When I look at AJ, I see someone that likes a lot of iso ball. I see someone that likes to pick his spots. He likes to slow the game down, read it, and get his buckets and force his team a victory. When I see DP, I see one who is always in attack mode, who's seldomly really being still unless he's not involved in the play like here. But you can see that he's potentially ready for any pass or any kick out. And that's his strength, moving off the ball. We didn't see a lot of his own ball play, and people are still questioning whether that really is a strength of his, but I think we've seen enough from him that he can develop that, especially if he's just focused on developing it. I don't think it's impossible for him to become a lead point guard, especially in today's league. The point guards don't need to average 8 assists. They only need to average a healthy amount to get their teammates involved. So in the case of the Washington Wizards, let's say they draft Darryn Peterson #1. He's not the player that you necessarily want to just give the ball to out of the gate. Hey, here's the keys to playing point guard. But that's the benefit of having Trae Young on this team. And even though people were looking at Trae Young and like, oh man, he opted out, that was the plan the entire time. If any content creator is saying anything crazy about Trae Young possibly going to another team because he opted out, they don't know what's going on with the Wizards. Don't listen to that content. That person does not know anything about this organization or their plans. They're just feeding into the frenzy. Trae Young is not going anywhere. But Trae Young staying does not dictate whether they draft Darryn Peterson or AJ Dybantsa, because Darryn Peterson will benefit well coming to this team that Trae Young is already the floor general of. Similar to how SGA played with Chris Paul, Darryn Peterson can play the 2-guard, learn from Trae Young. Trae Young's probably going to be here for 2 to 3 years. Who knows what his trade value will be? We'll probably repair it, and he'll probably want to go to another team. Who knows? But then Darryn Peterson can step up and take that lead guard position. And hopefully by then, someone like Trey Johnson has already filled his body out, has already improved his defensive playmaking skills, his offensive playmaking skills. And he's a great complementary player to play next to DP if and when he eventually would become a point guard. If not, we need Bilal to desperately get up to 35% on his three-point jumpers, or at least be deadly from the corner three. And the reason why Bilal would need to be deadly from the corner three, because he's a great slasher and cutter. If they are over helping on the corner three and he's there and they know he can at least knock down those corner threes, that's going to open up opportunities for him to cut and slash to the basket for easy putbacks, easy layups, and catch the offense off guard, especially if they get caught ball watching. And if the Wizards draft AJ Dybantsa, the first thing that they need to decide is, what role is he going to fill on a team that already has Anthony Davis and Trae Young? One of the biggest things about AJ Dybantsa that people say is, does he know how to be a second or third option? Does he know how to play off ball as well as he knows how to play on ball? Is he going to be able to survive in the NBA and thrive if he's not the focal point of the offense? And in this situation, do you want to go ahead and make AJ Dybantsa the focal of the offense, even though you have AD who may miss 30 to 40 games and a Trae Young who may try to come in here and average 25 and 12 like he did in his Atlanta days? Those are things that you have to think about. Regardless who you draft, you're going to try to build your team around that player because you're going to designate them as your franchise player. But because they have two different strengths and weaknesses and play styles and abilities, it's going to strongly dictate how you build your roster out, how you play winning basketball, and the adjustments that you make in the beginning and the end of games on the offense and defensive side. If you put AJ on this team, you'll most likely start him at the 3, and then you have to figure out who's going to play that 2 spot out of Keyshawn, out of Bilal, out of Trey Johnson. Anthony Davis is locked in at power forward. Hopefully Alex Sarr comes back fully healthy by training camp. He's locked in at the 5, and we all know Trae Young, the only position he can play is the 1. AJ has to play the 3. And let's just say that Anthony Davis doesn't stay healthy. Do you move AJ Dybantsa to the 4? And then from there, do you start Keyshawn and Bilal? And if Alex Sarr is healthy and you have AD, you just put AD at the 5, even though he doesn't want to. Can you be that versatile with Darryn Peterson on your team? It's either the 1 or 2. Trying to play him as a small ball 3 would be insane, especially against certain matchups. I've seen crazier things in the NBA, like Jeremy Shohan playing point guard for the Spurs. But I think people are focusing on who's the better player, who's the better player. I'll take this person over this person. You have to think about the assets that are already on this team. And people always say, drive best player available. But in this situation, you got 3 top players that are potentially the best player. And even though Boozer is number 3, he could very well end up being the best player in this draft 10 years from now. Same thing with Caleb Wilson. 10 years from now, we could be saying that Cameron Boozer and Caleb Wilson were better than Darryn Peterson and AJ Dybantsa. Of course, you want to draft best player available, but if that best player available doesn't fit your team, you're either going to ruin your team chemistry and your play style, or you're going to potentially ruin that player's career if he doesn't know how to adjust to not fitting well on a team. We've seen it happen countless time and time again. Thankfully for the Washington Wizards, I think they could go either or based on their team. For instance, in my opinion, the Jazz would have to do some major reconstruction to their roster if they ended up landing AJ Dybantsa or passed on Darryn Peterson and went with Cameron Boozer. Darryn Peterson is the only player that seamlessly fits on this roster unless they made some drastic changes. And I don't mean to knock on Utah Jazz fans, but you guys have a lot of talent on your roster. I don't think you guys should have been as bad as you are, and maybe you guys were intentionally tanking as bad as people say. I really don't know. I know there were some instances where it looked pretty bad, but when I look at the Jazz's roster, I was expecting them to be a lot better than they were. And I know they're in the Western Conference, but, But all in all, I think AJ wants to go number 1. Darryn Peterson wants to go number 1. And both of these players are thinking, hey, I'm going number 1. And it's up to the Washington Wizards to make a decision. And obviously the media, they're going to try to create a story behind this. They have to hype us up for the draft. And in my eyes, it's pretty obvious that AJ Dybantsa is the number 1 pick. And I get the argument. The more and more I watch Darryn Peterson film, I get the argument. But I just think in today's league, it would be a lot easier to find what Darryn Peterson brings to the table versus what AJ Dybantsa brings to the table as far as versatility and his ceiling. Am I saying that You can go find someone that is as good as Darryn Peterson, has his same fluidity and killer instinct. No. But you can find you a guard that gets you some buckets and hit threes and hit shots. You can find you a guard that can do that before you can find a 6'9" playmaking guard that has the defensive upside, even though they're calling him a cone, and has some secondary playmaking upside as well, and knows how to hit clutch buckets and just be a dog on the floor. It's too many variables to pass up. I think when people see Darryn Peterson, they just see a pure killer. But guess who else is a killer? Donovan Mitchell, Kyrie Irving. Jalen Brunson's clearly a killer, but look at the team that's surrounding him. Without that team surrounding him, the way that they structured that roster to help out with his inefficiencies on the defensive end and allow him to play the way that he plays, it doesn't work. It does not work. DP's medical concerns and the drama that was surrounding him at Kansas is one of the sole reasons why his stock is a little bit under AJ's, even though we see the differences in their skills. But the decision should really come down to, how do you want to build your team? These are two different players that play two different positions that have two different play styles. AJ is a type of player that you're probably going to have to build your team around him in order to maximize his potential, while DP is a player that you can essentially plug into almost any system and he's going to be able to do what he does best.